The first treat of the day is almost upon us. Now it's a thing in two parts, so nobody must leave after the first part is over. We're here to celebrate, or the launch of the, in Torbay, of this wonderful anthology on the National Health Service. I knew very little about the National Health Service, but it came into my hands, and I was about a year ago, and I was so excited and overwhelmed, I actually reviewed it. I asked to review it. Now, so what we're doing, we're going to have a reading first of all for about 3/4 of an hour of various parts of the anthology. And this will then, there will be no interval, but there will be a changeover after 3/4 of an hour. And then you'll be, we're going to have a small play to show you what it's like in certain aspects of the National Health Service. And these are the good people, so we're going to do it all for you. And they don't want me to go on and on and on about health, and there's plenty of things like that, okay? So I leave it to all of you, and good luck.
This is a really special occasion for us, because this book was born at the Torbay Poetry Festival 4 years ago. Our working title at the beginning was called The Crash Team, because we thought the NHS was in a terrible state and it needed emergency help. And that was at the end of 2010, and the reforms of the health service looked really alarming, and Wendy and I were having a cream tea, thanks to Patricia, up the road, and talking about how unhealthy cream teas were. And then we talked about health and the NHS, and about our own experience of living in doctors' households. And then when we started exchanging these stories about our family and our friends and our own experiences, we decided we wanted to do something that was, you know, the health service was going away, it was sifting between our fingers. We wanted to do something concrete. We did our own memoir of our experiences born into the NHS. We used poems, anecdotes, facts, bits of memoir, and we've structured it alphabetically, and we'll just do a taster from the alphabet today. Thank you.
So A is for alcohol, and the British Medical Journal reported that alcohol misuse costs the National Health Service £3 billion per year, and the cost to employers £6.4 billion per year. The number of women regularly drinking alcohol has almost caught up with the rate for men.
Anorexia. Leaving the ward, I headed for the canteen, a long session, watching a pea pushed round a plate until it was worn into the crockery, worn as my nerves were ready to spiral. 6 hours since breakfast, choices to be made. The neurosurgeons appeared not to worry about decisions after making decisions all morning. 10 minutes earlier, I watched from the window how they shed galoshes, green gowns, joked. Their plates were piled with dish of the day, treacle sponge. Their days must be weighed down by scan or brains. I surveyed the steaming bowls of curry, fish and stew, turned towards the salad. Even the tomatoes were too much.
C for cancer. Valerie Beryl directs the Cancer Epidemiology Unit in Oxford. She talks about research being needed to find the factors in pregnancy and breastfeeding that reduce the risk of breast cancer, so that some kind of immunisation can be developed. She also wonders why HRT is still questioned as a causal factor in breast cancer, despite the clear results of the Million Women study which she headed. This reluctance resembles the time when the Department of Health refused to publish results about links between lung cancer and smoking, because they didn't want to scare people.
Lump. An ancient Egyptian surgeon describes bulging breast lumps, and there's no cure.
My first memory of artistic endeavour is sketching women with big breasts.
Aetius of Amida, a Byzantine physician from the 5th century, said the knife should cut healthy tissue as well as malignant from around a tumour.
I drew these obsessively from aged 3, making the nipples more pointed, filling the margins of books.
Carcinos, either because of the pinch-like pain or because of the irregular boundaries making it look crab-like.
Once I was a teenager, mine did a topsy. They grew.
Dark bile was believed to course throughout the body. Even if the tumour was removed, bile remained, ready to create more.
With flat-chested sisters craving abundance, I wanted to look like a boy, not be a boy. They had their thumbs twisted off at school.
Hippocrates said breast cancer was caused by an excess of black bile, melanchole.
A male GP friend of my parents kept repeating a joke about grandma catching her tits in the mangle.
In September 1811, Fanny Burney had a mastectomy. The evil was so profound, the case so delicate, and the precautions necessary for preventing a return so numerous that the operation, including the treatment and the dressing, lasted 20 minutes. A time for suffering so acute that was hardly supportable. However, I bore it all with the courage I could exert, never moved, nor stopped them, nor resisted, nor remonstrated.
The obstetrician said, "You show ambivalent feelings about being pregnant," as my breasts grew and grew.
In 1769, French physician Jean Astruc took a piece of cancerous breast tissue and a slice of beef, and he burned both of them in an oven, and then he chewed them. They tasted the same. The conclusion, the tumour tissue didn't have any unusual amounts of bile or acid.
Breast pumps, the wretched milk machine chugging away, rushing back from work, waking her up, lying with her in a bath, the relief.
In 1713, Ramazzini wrote that the high frequency of cancer in nuns was due to lack of sex. Without regular sexual activity, reproductive organs, including the breasts, start to decay. Cancer's the result.
For years after Kate was born, my breasts would swell, harden at the sound of a crying baby.
Friedrich Hoffmann in 1742 decided that women who had regular sex but still developed cancer were practicing too vigorously, resulting in lymphatic blockage.
On hearing the diagnosis, my ex-husband gives me a book about knowing my emotions.
Galen discusses a range of pharmaceutical options: opium, castor oil, licorice, sulphur, variety of salves, as well as incantations to the gods.
A few years ago, waiting for a sister-in-law to buy a bra in John Lewis, I got bored, got measured. Not 38C at all, but 34FF. Not since breastfeeding did I look so closely and admire them.
Care. Hannah Arendt has written, "Thus, the modern loss of respect, or rather the conviction that respect is due only where we admire or esteem, constitutes a clear symptom of the increasing depersonalisation of public and social life."
Carers.
This is it.
You told the nurse as she drew back the curtains, let in the light. We're positive here.
This is it.
You squeezed her hand, refused the Weetabix. Later you let me feed you strawberries, break into pieces this Fortnum's Dundee cake, for you alone. Such pale eyes, blind, open, red roses in the blue ceramic vase. A raisin falls onto the sheet.
Push it back between my teeth. Okay, swallowed it.
A sadness lodges in this borderless country. It's difficult to map where stars have had their lights extinguished, but I press on today, reliving what it was, the why and how you enjoyed that last glass of lukewarm wine, the empty bottle in the bin. Too tired, I walked downhill to catch a train to where it took me.
And that was it. Goodbye.
London GP and columnist Dr. Fred Cavalier wrote in The Guardian on the 3rd of March 2013 that from the 1st of April that year, when all NHS services would be open to privatisation, UK health services were set to deteriorate. The NHS had failings, he acknowledged, some of which were highlighted by the Francis report into deaths at Mid Staffordshire Hospital. but the care of patients had always been its core activity. GPs and hospitals were in agreement on the NHS's raison d'etre. In a privatised NHS, every activity would henceforth have to be specified in a commercial contract. If some vital aspect of a service is left out, it will not get done, argued Dr. Cavalier, or it will appear as an extra when the bill comes in.
D for delivery.
Just conscious, you tell me your dream.
Your father came back, no longer dead, said I'd betrayed him. When we met nearly 70 years before, I never told him about the fiancé, not even when he called late at night disturbing the landlady, those grotty digs in Royal Terrace. When he came to collect me to assist at deliveries in Kingsthorpe, Abington, Tarcotton, taking me for the difficult ones, exhausted women, their panic, the early hours drive along empty roads. How I held my breath, watched as he gentled out a bloody head, his long fingers. Then I cut the cord, or he waited as I seized the forceps, eased the infant free. So I ditched the fiancé, married him, but I said nothing. Fine for you to say.
It's no big deal.
How come he was so angry?
These are her last coherent words. Yet she's still waiting for the doorbell, that call from the landlady, for my father's help with her final act.
Dementia. Heaven, this word with such infinite qualities. Suppose instead of heaven you'd said swifts, the ones that come and go from our garden. They always return like memories, almost lost. We should only speak in the present tense. To speak in the past is to speak when we are dead.
Is there fruit cake for tea?
Calls my aunt from the kitchen.
Fish cakes for supper?
She says to an empty room, and the kitchen, after 100 years of standing, doesn't need a reply. Such forgetting what day of the week we were born, whom we once loved, whether or not it's time for swifts. All this narrows 4 walls into a world. An oak table, a long dead father, who stands in duckweed, conducting La Bohème from the middle of the pond.
D for drugs. Ben Goldacre, in his book Bad Farmer, How Drug Companies Mislead Doctors and Harm Patients, has written, drugs are tested by the people who manufacture them, in poorly designed trials on hopelessly small numbers of weird, unrepresentative patients, and analysed using techniques which are flawed by design in such a way that they exaggerate the benefits of treatments. Unsurprisingly, these trials tend to produce results that favour the manufacturer. When trials throw up results that companies don't like, they're perfectly entitled to hide them from doctors and patients.
Riding a sheep into Morocco. We all laughed when Dalgett said that one day he'd be discharged, would ride a sheep into Morocco. Against advice he's left, leaving Earth's wrack with his drums. When he first arrived on section, and speechless, I saw the pupils in his eyes dilate. With regular medication and meditation, another he emerged. He wrote that I should travel with sunflowers in my hair.
Cup your ears to catch the voice of gods.
Now he'll ride that sheep into Morocco, hitting it with his whip, and he'll cling to varnished plains for fear of falling.
E, endoscopy. I'll go smoothly. Spot what needs to be healed. The ridged walls glisten, tighten, slick me ahead. His guts speed up, pump. I can feel his aorta thump against the stomach. He is nervous. I want to shrink to a dot while I look for adhesions, nodules, a crater. I'm being squeezed, can hear rumbles, a gurgle, a sigh. I'm closer than her when she kisses his belly. Those villi wave like fields of corn, miss them, too fast, slow down. Yellow curds swirl adrift. I slip, whoosh down the slope of this drainpipe's muscular lining. Something dark floods in, slides away without his say-so. I don't take the path to his appendix, get a short rest in his cecum. It's been continuous, autonomous, sympathetic. At the colon, the all clear. It was only a day trip with acid and bile. He can shift me out, live.
Body, blood, brain, plasma, tissue.
Body, blood.
Leave
brain,
Martel
blood,
Road, walk along
leave
Robson.
Martel Road, walk along
Vagus nerve, the wandering nerve.
Vagus nerve,
Up to the cemetery, a listed building. The one that jumps a gap. Nerve, how can a cemetery be a listed building? Vague nerve, climb a mountain nerve. Amble along the high street. Nerve that gets on my nerves. Down Lansdowne, away from the wine bar. Melanoma, gut, pancreas, insulin. Don't be tempted, don't have a drink. Ligaments, cells, tissue, we've had that. Appendicitis. Think of that child in Kings with peritonitis. Past the church, down to the butcher. The magic of the pancreatic B cell. Past Oddbins, don't even think about it. Muscle, biceps, piriformis, platysmus, quadriceps. Past the rows, car scales. Brain again, hippocampus, sera. Back up to Myton, don't wake anyone. Fuck.
Fuck.
Gold. 3 months before you were born, the technician off sick. I went in early to do the casting.
The wax impression of a patient's fractured cusp, already embedded in plaster. I set the mould in the centrifuge.
Added the gold. It forms in the last few seconds of a star's death. You started to kick. We assumed you'd be a boy.
You'd carry your father's name, his father's family killed in the camps. I didn't think of gold crowns.
Only that a boy would ensure the name. I took the flame to the metal. When it melted, began to spin.
I released the spring, let it fly, then with tongs plunged the mould into water. Hot stone spat from grey metal. I ground, then polished it with resin, until I could see your face.
H. Health. The World Health Organization defines health as a state of complete physical, mental and social well-being, not merely the absence of disease or infirmity.
Hips. Charnley had begun to develop full hip replacement from 1958, using post-mortems of willing patients to investigate the acceptance of new hips. He moved his practice to Wrightington Hospital in Lancashire, where the first full replacement took place.
Hospice. Jo's not my relative, just someone who heard of my interest in stones. She walked me round her large Dulwich garden, showed off her collection of pebbles.
So what am I doing here with her in this place?
She asked me to feed her pieces of grapefruit, complains the segments taste like leather, says, change the brand, and I say,
sorry.
We play aeroplanes. She opens her throat, bares her teeth, and it hurts to swallow. So she sucks the juice and spits the skin into a bowl. The acid smells more bilious than the sputum. My stomach handles it, and she recites NASH.
You know, the one about the rhinoceros being preposterous.
And we laugh, and the nurse brings the nebulizer.
It shouldn't be worn on the forehead, and it's up to me to take control.
It's not a miner's lamp, but Jo protests, and I try to insist. She says she's suffocating running a marathon.
Oh, God.
I leave it, and Jo lets out a puppy yelp, and I say,
Sorry.
for God's sake, stop saying sorry.
But the word clacks off my tongue.
By now she's talking, and forgotten who I am, calls me
Her.
But this is her dying, so it doesn't matter. Stories about the nurse who holds her so firmly she can't believe she'll ever fall again. Tears trickle while her bottom is wiped.
When she feels stronger, she wants to shout out, ask. Through the window, I see a huge incinerator, smouldering. All this crap about death being a romantic notion. I walk down the carefully vacuumed stairs, welcome the littered street, head towards the bricklayer's arms.
Cicely Saunders opened St Christopher's Hospice in 1967 in South London. In 2006, about 4% of all deaths in England and Wales took place in a hospice setting. about 20,000 patients.
H is for hospital. Trying to go quietly down the 9 flights, her shoes ring out on the concrete stairs, 3 a.m. Empty entrance hall, clatter of coins, double espresso.
She waits at a sealed window, looking across the neon-lit street. Abandoned offices, ranks of luminous monitors. Shudder from the machine. Slow clicks. A plastic cup drops into place.
Somewhere an empty lift shuts, opens. In the distance is a rumble, possibly wheels, maybe a trolley. Corridors above. Someone is running.
Claire said when doing a house job after a 20-hour shift, racing from an hour in bed to a crash team, so tired, she caught herself thinking, please let them be dead.
The lift doors open on the 4th floor. No one. A baby's cry from behind padded walls. A ping startles as she reaches level 9.
The workstation's empty. Lud's flight to the nurse's kitchen. Her father's room is now filled with the rattle in his lungs. The suction shudders into action, chugs.
Go gently, the din won't wake him. She clears his throat, insides of his cheeks, under his tongue. The silence lengthens between each breath.
I, infestation. Paragonymous westermani is a lung fluke, transmitted in its larval form through eating infected crabs. Crabs as in mollusks, that is, not Pithritus pubis. This latter, the crab lice, inhabits the genital regions and is one of the 3 lice that can colonise humans, one of the others being Pediculus humanus capitis, the head lice. Nits are not the lice, but the remains of their eggs.
We only the ones that remember.
And what wonderful times we had when you walked at my side. And we talked of the stars and how each of us is stardust, dust from the same stars, we wondered.
It's odd to think that stars are dead thousands of years before their light shines through.
You spoke in fragments and left me to guess. The further out we look into the sky, the further back in time we go. Those were your thoughts. When we had time before you left. But now as I walk to Covent Garden, I know you're with me. I'm reliving the gale, how we sheltered to phone Taipei, on a phone card like a final breath about to expire, eating the crabs, chicken feet and garden snails. We couldn't swallow down.
It's a wonder we're still here.
Remember the laughter, the expectation. Rain raining down.
L. Loss. At this time of the morning, we can always find her on the boarding house veranda overlooking the lip of the Atlantic, above a hedge of rhododendrons, roots gritted into sand, tapping her empty glass and waiting. She says she should have written it down, as if to set in print the day she threw the diamond into Loch Con, as if she would let go, if only we could. Pitch loss as a frisbee in a curve across the meadow, skimming the tips of the tallest grass.
No longer will I come to you.
This morning's early light woke my thoughts, July 8th. It would have been your 30th year. I go to Iceland for the midnight sun. Campers under sun-capped mountains, tiny churches, silhouetted on the edge, houses, sheep, horses descended. From Viking days, a country of lupins, buttercups. When I was young, I believed the dead were driven in taxis to the stars. No taxi to take us to heaven on dirt roads, which circled round the impenetrable centre of cracked earth. In Iceland, God was hiding in a shepherd's croft. Every evening, morning disappears, and all the fields you ever ran around are soaked in twilight. This present seems motionless, everything slow.
Oh, get on with it.
The Earth's crust is thin, huge craters to fall through, continental plates separating, and in the distance 2 fishermen slide out of focus. Warnings about potholes in the road all disappear against the light, and Iceland cut in 2 by the mid-Atlantic ridge, drifting away from herself. Each morning you're nearly gone.
M. Maternity. From the moment as a toddler I wander off, she sets me apart.
You never came back.
She claims I'd been taken,
You're not mine, a chainsnake.
stolen by something bountiful in strangeness. Nothing like that in these Czech woods. Friends warn,
You're crazy walking alone. Psychos behind every bush.
it's safe here. Dark among the firs, circling buzzards, rustle of leaves, thud of muscle. A deer hurls across my path. I was never lost, simply a child setting off. Or perhaps she knew better. Possibly these trees need my mother's belief. Everything is exhilarating, but it's quiet. Today I bet some of her,
Thieving fairies.
almost too small to spot, hidden in black shawls, are at the corner house, above the passage to the yards, past the turf sheds. And she is with them, in an alcove of the last loft, drinking tea with whiskey, playing cards.
The NHS was born on July the 5th, 1948, and since that time the infant mortality rate in England and Wales has fallen from 34 per thousand live births to 5.
P is for penicillin. It's about a man who healed the sick as far as he was able. And this is the man who begged for penicillin to cure a child as far as he was able. It's about a man who burnt Fleming's letter when the answer came back.
None to spare.
It's about a man who spoke at the funeral as far as he was able. And this is the man who 7 decades later still remembers the date on the letter he wrote. It's about a man who waits in his chair for a nurse to bring him whiskey and water. This is the man who drinks the new year in, although it's a man who can no longer hear, who peers out of his frame as far as he is able, who thinks his own thoughts. It's about a man who comforted others.
Death is inevitable, comes to us all.
It's about a man who is showered daily and who now understands as far as he is able.
Prescription. He is her pharmacist, stands behind the counter, smiles, broad palms flat on the glass top, broad thumb down the centre of her back, reaches for a demijohn of some vile pink, remedy or poison, decants it into a deep blue bowl, can read her eyes, read her needs, will take his mortal, pestle, crush her heart. She is powder, ink, she is his.
You were just doing all the italics.
First thing, slap hands 9 times. Cry out, I'm a winner. God says you'll grow or you'll decline.
We just...
Sorry. You're going to
Sorry
do
about this.
italics, not the black.
Yeah, no, I'm not doing
This is
anything.
private.
This was an actual motivation session for dentists who were thinking of going.
First thing, slap hands.
Then you do the italics. Just go straight through.
Cry out, I'm a winner. God says you'll grow or you'll decline. Whatever you sell today, someone sells for less tomorrow. Life's not about volume. Patients don't understand 90%. Let them trust. Sell what they don't think they need and remember their names. Use it at least 3 times. There are power words. Fantastic to have you with us. Terrific. You've passed on. It's an opportunity that way. People feel better about themselves. If people owe you, they don't like you. Create urgency, but don't rush. Compliment them. Great to see you. Verbal skills make or break because patients ask the same questions. Will it hurt? How long will I last? Don't say too much and don't itemize year by year. Ask for commitment.
Psychiatry. He never arrives on time, leaves 10 minutes before the end. The psychiatrist says it's his way of coping, as Sam confesses to switching the washing machine off before the end of a cycle. Says he's read today's paper tomorrow. It's how he catches up with himself. He asked me not to discuss his affairs at the next review.
Shit.
He says, pacing around.
Why do I want to be on top of today when yesterday's too hard to find?
As his therapist, I could lose my job withholding information as I finger walk on a map the streets from New Cross to Camberwell, where he knows every fish and chip shop, but tells me he always leaves the largest chip in the packet and then runs his finger over the edge of the grease.
For the sting of every last grain of salt. Psychiatric hospital. Mr. Blatney perseveres. He skips basket weaving, writes wherever there's light. Some privacy, a garden bench, a toilet. Mr. Blatney needs this institution, needs asylum, needs its styrofoam muffled away from the piercing ding-ding. Next patient, room 3.
He's not keen to go anywhere. Everyone rushing. What he wants is nearer than anything they suggest. Danger collapses distance. Questions are fists. Terror, I remembered tinnitus. Matron's voice pitched as the last castrato in Bruno or the blade of escape.
What can Mr. Blatney do? He writes to get closer, mixing it to cope. No point to new language without plurals. Past, future, he doesn't need it sparer, but dense.
It's necessary, this cotton wool protection of English, Czech, French. Or to connect. It moves the border to what he wants. Holds off deranged woodpeckers, the thugs, their bulky suits, blur of Slivovich, their bullying summonses. He transforms feeling. Love needn't start from the palate or stay on the tongue. He changed his origin in the body. Glasgow, Miliuce, shifts the heart, shifts him home.
For je n'ai pas peur, he can throw out his arms, away from his folded-in plea for sanctuary.
Radiography. Refreshing smells can be nauseating. No flowers. Maybe bright red nail varnish is the answer. Revlon's feminine streaks painted dark against the night.
Every down movement a kind of seduction, each cuticle pushed back to reveal more nail. Her nails are as strong as they can be for this moment. No scrubbing pans, weeding the garden, planting potatoes.
No need to watch the clock or think of others now ward round's over. For this is not the red of fire that sets alight the furnace.
It's not the red that burns in passion at the end of day, nor the sunset's reflection on the hospital bed. It's the red of Revlon, painted against the hunger of white cells.
Rhinovirus. And only a few hours after shaking hands with a person with a cold, you too could have it. They want to track me down, isolate me, keep me forever in solitary. All I ask is somewhere warm and moist. I'm small, but basically sociable. Yet they say they paid people to entertain me. Now it's fancy names and lots of cousins. They dislike the way I split easily, breed too quickly, how I stick to door handles, lurk, persist, survive. I'm interesting. Therefore, to be linked to something common is a failure of description. I've kept them guessing. I am various. I will change.
S. Skunk. Terence had taken skunk, wanted to be a bird. His therapist once accused him of being a magpie.
He wasn't a magpie, didn't covet anything that didn't belong to him.
Just wanted what was his, and sleep. He dreamed of being a kestrel hovering.
At school, a teacher had once shouted, "Cuckoo," sent him back to the back of the line.
He vowed one day people would see that it was never his fault.
Now was his chance to grow wings, a beak, circle round the back of the stage.
He'd watched the kites feeding at Tregaron, observed how they knew the exact moment to dive.
Swoop for their prey, and then with a flourish, spread wings, reach up extravagant against the sky. Suicide. Suicide's just the tip of the iceberg in front of an increase in depression, wrote David Stucker in a 2009 article in The Lancet that collected data from 26 European Union countries over more than 3 decades. We're seeing signs of a mental health crisis. Every increase of 1% in the unemployment rate is associated with a 0.8 increased rise in suicides by people younger than 65.
T. Transplant. In March 2013, there were 7,332 people waiting for organ transplants.
On the table is a donor card. All I thought she cared about were her beads, her poster of Keanu, her mango skin cream, that she only fed parsnips, black and white movies with subtitles, and heavy talk about homework. Yet she's tipped away her whole body, and I'm the one to be informed.
W. Welfare State. Tony Jute in Ill Fares the Land has written, by eviscerating public services and reducing them to a network of farmed-out private providers, we have begun to dismantle the fabric of the state. As for the dust and powder of individuality, it resembles nothing so much as Hobbes' war of all against all, in which life for many people has once again become solitary, poor, and more than a little nasty.
Whiskey and water. It's August, and the winds have disappeared. When I go tonight and begin my journey home,
I'll think of other times, like waiting for a train at some godless station in the snow and no sign of anyone.
then the man appeared. He stood so close to us as if we were protection.
We were main players in a film, father and daughter, pretending we knew the outcome of the night.
The flakes fell, covering the sign that told us where we were. Other evenings after surgery, you'd call at my flat.
For that whiskey and water, so much to talk about. Stories delivering babies in the Blitz, striding back across the park.
Oblivious of everything except new life, bombers overhead.
Now we're left with stories, our history.
Yesterday's rain.
The furry dance.
Ladies and gentlemen, Susanna is bringing a case under the Mental Health Act, stating that being sectioned under the age of 18 and admitted to hospital against her wishes has been an infringement of her rights. You will have made your own decisions by the time you leave here this morning.
I'm Susanna.
I am the psychiatrist and Matisse.
I am Susanna's mother.
3 blind mice, 3 blind mice. See how they run, see how they run. They all run after the farmer's wife who cut off their tails with a carving knife. Did you ever see such a thing in your life? There's 3 blind mice, 3 blind mice. My mother told me if I was goody that she would buy me a rubber dolly. My auntie told her I kissed a soldier. Now she won't buy me my rubber dolly.
Susanna, when I first held you in my arms, I had no idea that adolescence would be as difficult as this. I fed you stories and songs, swiveled you to face the light. I planted you in a climate from southern Europe so you grew, bloomed early.
17. Tired of Napoleonic wars, I played truant from school. Join in the fairy dance.
Next year will be yours to flaunt your fragrance in front of the man who tries to deceive you with promises. In autumn, roses need little attention. I'll dig my dreams around your roots, and they'll thrive in the wild.
Wild. Wild for me is the night. Wild for me is dancing through Brixton. Wild for me is looking for a festival. Doing my own fairy dance.
Incoherent in the street, disinhibited in dance. Out of touch with whose reality? Susanna loves to dance.
My mother
We all
told
love to
me
dance.
if I
Gospel
was
sings
goody,
along Camberwell New
that
Road,
she would
held in
buy
fear,
me
passing cars.
a rubber
What are you
dolly.
drinking? What are you drinking? Vodka and orange? It's only 11 o'clock, for God's sake. Come on, come on. We have an appointment with your psychiatrist.
But Susanna, you like vodka and orange. Tell her, she is not you, and you will never be her. Listen to me. I am not the voice of common sense or reason. I am Matisse, and I have chosen you to talk. Because you listen to me.
Inside my head, messages press my brain. I need this vodka to understand what they are saying. One brain can cope, the other cannot.
Leave me to cope with the brain that cannot cope. I will feed it messages. Listen.
Susanna, how many times? You must find something stimulating to do. Forget your boyfriend. Come home to your family. You must. Too much dance and sex, for God's sake. Concentrate on something else, or you'll end up a long-term patient in hospital.
I sleep in the corner of morning, fly without wings through the ward. Through the window the sun breaks, over rhododendrons. One man with a fish stands looking for a god, embroidered on tapestry, woven in therapy. He weeds my thoughts, plucks dandelions, bends double to digest the words that escape from my mouth. In the past, red wine loosened my tongue. Now they want me to take lithium. His trousers match my skirt, the always other world, excitedly here. Every morning I sing my songs, tell my stories, and they increase my meds, steal my dreams, write me up in their notes.
If you do, as the doctors say, take your medication, I will buy more paints. As many paints as you want, even though you have hundreds, as many as Matisse.
Susanna believes I am Matisse, but draws her own arms as white twigs, colours herself as if she is afraid, to feel, to laugh. She wonders.
Will my wound ever heal? If I can find the rhythm of line and harmony of colour like Matisse, I will be fine.
J'aime beaucoup la danse. La danse est une chose extraordinaire. Vie et rythme. Il m'est facile de vivre avec la danse.
Matisse, tell them. You talk enough telling me to dance. Tell them. It gets into their heads too. Don't leave it all to me. Tell them about the dance. How dance is a healer. Matisse, please. Did you hear that? Go on. Say you heard it. Admit it. It's in your heads too.
My child, I only talk to you, to you.
What is the child talking about now?
To you, to you. Do not look at your mother for help. You are the privileged one. You love me. That's why it is you.
No longer take precautions.
Takes
Up to my nose in
down
bubbles, I step
to
from
a
the bath,
place
muttering.
by the
Skip
river.
naked past my dazed
She
mother.
feeds me till
garden
on
smells of
leaves
lilies.
that come all
Walk
the
down the
way
path to
from
honeysuckle. Yellow stems of
Jesus
fragrance and
was a
leaves
sailor.
streamlined in the air.
when he walked upon
At
the
10,
water.
it starts. The music is blaring. The hooch has kicked in and I'm up for it. I dance from the pub into the rain. I'm out of my depth. Trot around puddles. A swan on a lake. I pivot by a bus shelter. You grab my scarf in the doorway. We walk to the tower block. Camberwell's furry dance never takes off. I'm not ready for what you want. I relive this on the ward, ask for more meds, and you tell me to sleep it off.
There are no auditory or visual hallucinations. She suffers from delusions with a sexual content. Forget Freud. Kitzinger's book. Sex is not just a rubbing together of bodies, but involves our minds, which play extraordinary tricks. We take our minds into each sexual encounter.
The year of the eclipse. The Cornish light is dim. I want to trip into the sea. I'm not mad, but sane. Not sane, but mad.
Those words tell me nothing. Which is the crime? To be sane or mad?
Can a sane man set fire to a city?
Can a mad woman put out the flames? Why does she always dance with the lights off?
'Cause London's burning, London's burning. Fire, 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 pour on water. I can dance in the rain in a multicoloured coat. Don't throw me in the pit with the bears. I'll parade with the townsfolk, waving my dobbin, shout giddy up, and leap up the stairs. I could set fire to a city and put out the flames. 'Cause London's burning, London's burning, fire, fire.
The gods saw you were happy and put out the dance. Every beginning has a fatality. You are lying down, fumbling. Where are you leading us?
I'm inviting you to join in with me, to see things as I see them, if only for seconds.
That's right, my child. Invite them to join in with you. See what happens? Seconds can turn to minutes, to hours, to days. Invite them in, invite them in. Mental illness is not a myth, as some say. The majority of normal people suffer psychiatric abnormalities, blunted, stupid morbidity of the lobotomised.
I'm far from lazy. Remember me? Hello? This is about me, remember? One night, I escaped from the perils of the ward, vignette myself into London, cross a bridge, throw myself into the Thames.
The nurse wrote up a vivid description of the night the police pulled her out. Weeping, her mother later explained to me.
The white angels of heaven floated upstream, enticing her to join them, flaunting a message that was held tantalizing just to the right of her life.
Tell them I'm not depressed. He said this morning my world has changed, so he's going to give me sulphuride.
Sulphuride has its uses for acute and chronic schizophrenia. Care should be taken when hypomania is present. She craves to be a rare breed, an unusual species, an orchid. More id than orc, if you ask me. She needs me. Psychiatrists in New York diagnose schizophrenia twice as often as doctors in London. Our preference? Manic depression. Bipolar affective disorder. Diagnosis identifies disease, allocating it to a category according to symptoms and signs.
There are 4 components.
Interviewing technique of psychiatrists.
Perception of patient's speech and behaviour.
Complicated series of processes by which the psychiatrist sorts out information.
Open the family Bible. Close your eyes with a pin, land on a letter. P. Pain, psychotic. This patient is a pain. She is also psychotic.
I'm non-compos mentis. My mind goes dumb and I go cautiously down the corridors of time. They say I'm psychotic.
Psychosis, noun from psyche, breath, soul, mind, animating principle of the universe, rare. Also rare, a butterfly, a moth, after Raphael's painting of Psyche, a cheval glass.
On my 60th, 5 o'clock in the morning, my daughter sings Happy Birthday down the phone. I'm not surprised when the call ends abruptly and she screams.
Not many more now!
Language handed you back an emptiness, difficult to imagine.
How many times have you told me about when your waters broke?
And the time you slept through the dream we tried to warn you might happen.
Pain is acute. What do I see? See, it is dark, and there's a density of birds flying away.
Cupid visits Psyche, the beautiful maiden. He departs at sunrise, forbidding her to find out who he is. A night of loving, and she lights the lamp to look. A drop of hot oil falls on his bare shoulder. He awakens. She looks. He flees, and the abandoned Psyche wanders far in search of her lover forever.
3 blind mice, 3 blind mice. See how they run, see how they run. They all run after the farmer's wife who cut off their tails with a carving knife. Did you ever see such a thing in your life as 3 blind mice?
Ladies and gentlemen, Susanna is bringing a case under the Mental Health Act, stating that being sectioned under the age of 18 and admitted to hospital against her wishes has been an infringement of her rights. You will have made your own decisions by the time you leave here this morning. Personal, of course, each memory so personal, but Susanna's bête noire is a carpet tinged like marmalade. She sat in that chair in that waiting room, wringing her hands, praying the voices in her head would disappear into the psychiatrist's head, invade his space, and have him leaping through the window to escape the madness he pretends to understand. When he asked her what day of the week it was, she answered,
What's the point of a wasp's existence?